Yo, what's going on, guys? It's your boy. Welcome back to another video. So, Kung Fu Panda 4 released, and I low-key wish it didn't. But that being said, there are now 4 Kung Fu Panda movies. We're going to go ahead and rank them. I just want to remind you guys before I get too far into this list is my list. You guys are free to have your own ratings. So if you guys have a disagreement, feel free to comment down below. I love having discussions. But that being said, let's dive right into this. In dead last place, we got Kung Fu Panda 4. I absolutely hate saying that a movie feels like a cash grab, but this one 100% absolutely does. I feel like none of the characters really feel like the exact same version of themselves. This world doesn't feel exactly as magical as it once did. A lot of the karate and kung fu sequences don't feel as epic as they did in the past, and I think it's really depressing how they had this incredible world building, and they had a lot of great lore with, oh my god, the Dragon Warrior, he's this legend, and they basically made it seem so meaningless in this movie. I feel like, for one, with him going to other cities and them not knowing who the Dragon Warrior was, it was funny the first time, but at the same time, it's like, he was like a world-renowned hero in the original trilogy, and the fact that he's like going to a town that honestly didn't even seem that far over, and he's like, I'm the Dragon Warrior, and people are like, the who? The what now? The what's going on? And it's like so disappointing. And then on top of that, the whole thing with Shifu being like, oh, by the way, you need to replace yourself. There needs to be a new Dragon Warrior. And him basically just throwing it on him and being like, you need to pick the new Dragon Warrior immediately doesn't make sense at all in the context of this world that we're in. Because in the original Kung Fu Panda movie, it is a very big deal that there's this big showcase. There's this giant event that's leading up to them figuring out who the Dragon Warrior is going to be. There's the Furious Five who have been training forever, and they all believe that they're going to be the next Dragon Warrior. And it's this big, like, kind of sacred moment. And in this movie, they're kind of like, okay, you need to pick a new Dragon Warrior. Poe's like, I don't want to do that. And then Shifu's like, okay, tomorrow, we're going to do it. And it doesn't feel like some big gratuitous thing. It doesn't feel like this grand moment where we're having to watch a bunch of people, you know, showcase their skills and their talents and everything to become the Dragon Warrior. They're just like, okay, we're going to do this little talent show thing and you're going to pick somebody. And it just doesn't feel right to me. And then on top of that, overall, there's so many great concepts for this movie, but none of them get played off very well. I feel like the Chameleon could have been an incredible villain. It could have been somebody who's very interesting. And they take this character who their entire shtick is that they can look like anybody. They could probably infiltrate, you know, a city or whatever and pretend to be other people who are very close to, you know, the main character, and they don't use that a single time. The Chameleon's entire strength is the fact that they can look like other people, and they don't really use it at all. It doesn't really make sense, because after we find that out, she immediately decides to just lock herself in her tower like she's Fiona from Shrek, and it just drives me insane. Also, sorry for my language, that was bad. But this movie just took these films, which I loved and I held dear my entire childhood, and it basically, like, disgraced them. Like, I personally believed that this movie was going to be one of the best movies that came out this year, and it's terrible. It's not great. It doesn't live up to the other movies. It's an okay movie, and I feel really bad because I just made a review of it, and in my review, I was like, it's a good movie for kids. That's the problem. It shouldn't just be a good movie for kids. It should be a good movie for people of all ages, because this is a sequel to a trilogy that has been out for over 8 years. They had plenty of time to come up with a proper story if they were going to bring these characters back, if they were going to take us back to the world of Kung Fu Panda, and they didn't. They showed it zero love, and honestly, it's quite disappointing to me. I could not get on board with this movie at all, and as much as I would like to be like, yeah, I'd recommend watching this movie, I don't. It's not a good movie. Okay, but now with that being said, we have another movie that I thought was also kind of ruining the franchise. We got Kung Fu Panda 3. Personally, I'm not a big fan of this movie. I've talked about it before. I think that this movie is way too silly compared to the other 2 movies. I think that Kung Fu Panda 1 has a lot of comedy in it, and other than that, it definitely has serious moments where it needs to be serious. But then we have Kung Fu Panda 2, which is a very, like, kind of darker story. It really dives into the background of, you know, Kung Fu Panda, his entire existence, and the fact that he was abandoned as a kid and he's a foster kid and he's an orphan and he didn't really know where his family went or why he's the only panda that seems to be inexistent anymore. And then we have that very, very serious movie. And then we get this, which is just a very, very terrible movie. It has a bunch of over-the-top humor with, oh, there's just a bunch of fat jokes because all of the pandas are just fat and they're lazy and they sleep in all day. And there's this whole story about, like, okay, Poe needs to find the pandas because the pandas are going to teach him all about inner chi and inner peace and stuff like that. And overall, when he gets there, he just finds out that they're lazy and they're not actually Kung Fu warriors. And then by the end of the movie, it kind of just gets revealed, oh, well, actually, because of ancestral bullshit, they are secretly masters of chi. And that movie for the longest time ticked me off because I was like I said, I think that the first two Kung Fu Panda movies are incredible movies. They're a big part of my childhood. So I was expecting for, Kung Fu Panda 3 to be really good. And when it was kind of disappointing, I was like, man, it kind of ruined the trilogy for me. Like I said, really over-the-top humor that, in my opinion, doesn't work that well. And it still has a really good villain, though. Kai is fantastic. There's a lot of really cool elements of it. I feel like everything with the spirit realm and Master Oogway is really interesting. And I like the fact that this movie basically ends with Po essentially being a god. And it also ends with him telling Shifu that he will teach him how to master these things, which I really liked because it gave the entire trilogy an overarching storyline of the student becoming the master and then teaching the master. And it had some elements that worked relatively well. I just think that it was overall relatively disappointing in comparison to the other two. But now in second place, we have a really, really good movie. This movie kind of defined my childhood a little bit. We got Kung Fu Panda, the first one. I'm a huge fan of this movie. I think that this movie is incredible. I think that the introduction to the Furious Five is fantastic. And I love this introduction to Po, showing that, at heart, he's still a kid. He's playing with his little action figures. He's always wanted to be a kung fu master, but because he's just some guy who works at a noodle shop, he never thought he could become anything more than what he was. He's not necessarily lazy, but he's kind of like a man-child in a sense. He lives in his father's attic or whatever. And I do think that they do a really good job of showcasing him as like a very unlikely hero. And Po in this movie goes through this entire journey of self-doubt. He ends up being in the right place at the right time and becomes chosen to be the Dragon Warrior. And he at no point believes that he deserves to be the Dragon Warrior. He goes through all this intense training. He never gives up. He's always trying his best. And he gets made fun of by the people who he's looked up to his entire life. There's a really great heartfelt story in here about Po and his character development and how he goes from being somebody who's filled with self-doubt and not believing that he is the Dragon Warrior to he opens up the Dragon Warrior scroll and he sees that the secrets of the Dragon Warrior scroll is to look within yourself. And that entire storyline, that entire just message is incredible. And I really love the fact that he is somebody who is not by any means the perfect kung fu karate person, but he's just a really, really good person overall. He has the spirit of somebody who deserves to be the Dragon Warrior. He has the energy and the passion and the love of kung fu to understand everything he needs to know to become this master karate kid, and I love it. I think that this movie is incredible. I think that this movie overall has incredible heartfelt moments in it, and I really, really love the first Kung Fu Panda movie. I think that it's a really hard movie to top, but coming in first place, we have Kung Fu Panda 2. In my opinion, this might be top 5 animated movies of all time. I know some people are going to disagree with that, but I feel like it is definitely up there with How to Train Your Dragons 2. It's up there with the animated Across the Spider-Verse movies, and I really, really love this movie. I think that, for one, tying the villain into the protagonist works incredibly well in this story. I think that Shen is an absolutely menacing villain in this. He's absolutely terrifying. The fact that he's creating this weapon of mass destruction that is going to potentially destroy village after village, and Po having to face that is an incredibly interesting story. I like the fact that they kind of give Po a sense of PTSD here. He sees Chen's little logos, and he's getting these flashbacks to when he was a child and when he was abandoned by his family. And the overall story of him figuring out that he was adopted is also beautiful in this movie. And I really like the fact that they played something off that was kind of a joke in the first movie of him just having a dad that's a bird, to now he's understanding that his dad took him in because his dad saw this little kid on the streets, and he couldn't just bear to let this kid, suffer on the streets alone. And it does a good job of showing Po's upbringing in a very heartfelt way, in a very emotional way. And on top of that, we get character development from all of the characters. Po's dad in this gets a lot of really good character growth, where for a moment he's really terrified that Po's not going to see him as his father anymore. And then when they get together and they have their moment where they hug it out in this movie, it's incredibly emotional. Tigress in this movie also finally kind of is starting to show emotions a little bit more as well. And I just think that overall this movie has the most character development with each of the individual characters. Po learns a lot about himself and learns a lot about his past and learns how to I don't even know how to describe it, but the moment where he redirects the cannonball, forget about it. I mean, that's just an incredible, incredible scene. The animation for it's incredible. The action sequences and everything in this movie is incredible. And overall, I just absolutely love this movie. I feel like I could go on and on and on about it because, like I said, I think this is one of the best animated movies of all time. There's so much to love about this movie. And I think I'm going to go ahead and leave this here. But for the most part, really love this movie. One scene that I have to shout out every time I ever talk about Kung Fu Panda 2, I love the moment where Poe and Tigress are on the boat and they're kind of having a little bit of an argument, and Poe says something, and Tigress looks like she's about to turn around and just absolutely glock him, and then she gives him a giant hug.
The hardcore can't understand.
Tigress, no!
The hardcore do understand. But I can't watch my friend be killed.
That scene makes me so emotional, and I love it so much. The original writers of the Kung Fu Panda trilogy did a brilliant job with each of these movies, and I really, really loved them. And it was fun coming back and ranking these and getting to revisit some of the older ones because, like I said, the first one was a big part of my childhood. It was like that movie and the movie Cars were like the two biggest movies ever for me growing up, and I absolutely loved them. And the original trilogy will always hold a special place in my heart, and it really bums me out that the fourth movie couldn't recapture any of that magic. But yeah, that being said, that was it for this video, guys. Thank you guys so much for coming by and checking it out. I love and appreciate you guys so much for watching. If you liked it, feel free to like and subscribe, and I'll hopefully see you guys in the next one. Peace out. Bow, bow, bow. Back at it again, but that's a relevant flow. So smooth, they calling me Mr. Elegant. Like an elephant, I got a long nose. Like a president, I've got a few hoes. Swift with a stutter, I'm smooth like butter. Don't see it coming when I slip undercover. Like a big dog, but I don't bite. I'm still a big broad, I'd win that fight. Come match you and I knock out your lights.